Thank you very much, Michelle, for coming and for giving us your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Do you prefer me to call you Brookti or Michelle?
Brookti.
Okay, sounds like you love the name. How did you get that name and when?
So it was given to me by a family in Ethiopia. When I was there 20 years ago, I made really good friends with one of the university students who is now like a sister to me.
Right.
And her family adopted me and gave me that name.
Right, wonderful. So you're probably born here, you live in America, and you could go to anywhere in the whole world. How did you go to Ethiopia first time, and how did you even heard about the country?
Yeah, so as a kid, the Lord gave me a vision for Ethiopia. Had never heard of Ethiopia, didn't know anything about Ethiopia. And then as a college student, I had an opportunity to go over and work with other college students, mostly centered in Addis.
Right. So you've been to Ethiopia on and off for the last 22 years, I heard?
Yes. So from those days of going over as a college student, I started an NGO called OLCM Africa, and since gone back and forth working on various projects, mainly focused again in Addis.
Right. What do you normally do when you go to Ethiopia? You're a nurse.
Yes, I am a nurse. So one of my big passions is working on HIV/AIDS, working in healthcare. And so one of the big projects I'm focused on right now, if I can share, is an HIV prevention project, working with a local-based NGO called Noah's Ark, AIDS Prevention Association, or again, NOMERKEB.
Okay.
And we're currently working in the Charcos area of Addis, working on HIV prevention, working with poor women who are at risk of contracting HIV/AIDS, as well as being involved in commercial sex work.
Right, great job. When were you last in Ethiopia?
I was there in December of 2019. I came back on Christmas Eve, just before the entire world shut down with the pandemic.
Right, so you haven't left the country because of the State Department took out a notice to leave the Ethiopian city, Addis Ababa. And if you were there and if you heard the American embassy notice saying that all the American citizens should leave the country because of the war and any unrest, would you have left the country?
No, I would not have left the country. I think you have to take every warning that the State Department issues out as, kind of a grain of salt. You have to use wisdom. You definitely need to have, when you're in a place, you need to have strategic alliances, have a better understanding of what's going on. I registered every year with the State Department whenever I travel, and they are constantly, issuing orders. So you got to use wisdom. And I don't think in this case I would have gotten back on a plane and come back to the United States.
Right, wonderful. We'll come back to that and CNN and other international media on Ethiopia. Does Ethiopia feel like home for you?
Ethiopia is home for me.
Right. Have you ever considered moving or living in Ethiopia?
Yes. Actually, just before the pandemic hit in 2019, I was considering what a move would look like coming to Ethiopia.
What do you love about Ethiopia mostly?
Oh, my gosh. That's an interesting question. What is there not to love about Ethiopia? I think one of the things I love the most is what I could, again, considering it home. When I come to my mom's house and actually having my mom's cooking. We've teased her and said, it should be called Emma's Kitchen. But her cooking, being home with family, I think friends, community is huge. I think Ethiopia's strength and resilience, her beauty. There's just a lot of good things to love. And then, what can't you not love about Kidfo? I mean, So.
Right. Lovely. You probably haven't learned the language yet. Maybe
finish.
Maybe you will in the future. You've been very busy, so you haven't gone out of the city that much and seen most of the cities or most of the countryside in the country. Where have you been though?
I've been outside the city a little bit, not as much as I would like. But I've been to Awassa. It's probably as far south as I've been is Awassa. I mean, everybody's been to Bishoftu and Sodore.
Yeah.
And then I've been to Bahadar. That was years and years ago. Yes, nice lakes. Yeah, but there's so much beauty I'd love to see.
Great, maybe in the future. So you've been, like I said, you've been in and out for the last 22 years. And you've actually left 2019. So He's been for the last 3 years is when the new government appeared. But based on your experience that you've been there, have you seen the last time just before you left the country on 2019? Have you seen any change in the country?
Yeah,
with the new government.
Wow, it's been a lot of things. I mean, I like the fact that the door was open for freedom of speech and, like you said, freedom of media. I think that's huge. Allowing Ethiopians, irregardless of your stance or your view on things, so regardless of political party, I think a lot. Abiy making a decision to free and open the doors to allowing those people to come over and have a part in what's happening, the change that's happening in Ethiopia.
Right. Well, you've seen the other leaders and prime ministers in the 22 years. It's not so short. So, but now you've seen Prime Minister Dr. Abiy compare with others who've been in prime minister place. What do you think of him?
I stand beside and behind Dr. Abiy Ahmed's his decisions. I think he's human, and I think that's the thing that the rest of the world needs to understand. He is human, just like any of us. But I appreciate his decisions and his courage. Where they're at war, he would choose not to be at war, but unfortunately, you can only poke the bear so many times before the bear strikes back. I think it was a decision that had to be made. I think he'd rather sit down and have a discussion and have negotiated peace. Unfortunately, that's not the direction that we're moving in right now. And so I think it's just important to see it from that perspective.
Right. I mean, he's leading the war now. He left the palace.
Tremendously courageous.
Exactly.
There's not very many leaders in the world that would. It's easy for leaders to bark decisions, but to actually put down your pride, to humble yourself, and to step out on the front lines alongside your countrymen, to me is honorable. I would stand behind any leader that did that.
Well, the West, some of the West countries don't seem to like that. They kept sending out messages saying the Peace Nobel winner is at war now up front, escalating the war in Ethiopia. So what do you think of that?
Well, they also said that it's a last desperate attempt. But as we've seen, let's go back even the last 10 years, anywhere in the world, any desperate attempt by a country, a leader went in hiding. So for a leader to step down, to me, and go on the front line says that he believes in the cause of what he's fighting for, right, which is protecting the country.
Ethiopia is having a fight or having a war with terrorist group. America or other Western countries like United Kingdom have been fighting that war for years and years. So they haven't actually been told by any other countries that to negotiate with the terrorist groups. The Ethiopian now being put in so much pressure to negotiate with the terrorist group, especially from America. What do you think of that?
I think America's always had her selfish motives. I think her foreign policy is rooted in selfish motive. To tell the prime minister to sit down with a terrorist group, I think we have to take a different stance on it. I think it's more of, can you sit down with people that are causing problems in a country? And I think he's willing to do that. Will he sit down and negotiate power? Probably not. I don't think that's the right motive, and I think that's what America would like to see.
Right. Well, Ethiopian communities seem to feel very not certain about the Western countries, and I have a feeling, and I know it very clearly, that the American community or European community, they can be trusted. We have faith in them, and I have faith in them. But the American stand, or other countries, maybe let's not talk about other countries, but the American stand, could it be the same as the American community stands against Ethiopia?
I think if Americans in general know the truth, I think Americans in general don't pay attention to even local things. They don't pay attention when it comes to local politics. I think they have no clue in understanding what's happening in Ethiopia. It doesn't affect them, doesn't bother them, so why get involved, I think, is the overall mentality. But I think if you educate, the Americans, people living here, I think that gives them the opportunity to decide. And I think overall, I think people generally have a good heart.
Right.
You know, they want what's right, and I think they will stand for truth.
I have that feeling as well. So, do you think we've taken the truth out to the world enough?
I think we've started. I think this is a good start. I always think rallies are a great start. It creates some noise. It builds momentum, creates unity. But I think then it's what happens afterwards. It's the strategy after the fact.
I heard that you participated in protest as well.
I sure did. And I also called my local congresswoman.
Right.
And I think that's one thing that Americans can do after the fact is now let's get involved. And you have to call your congressperson in your state. It's our right as an American citizen to let them know they're supposed to be representing us. And right now, the United States is not representing me.
Oh. Well, the American people probably get their information from CNN and other Western media, and the Western media don't seem to tell the truth. So why are they doing that? I mean, Ethiopia is an ancient country, and it's not as you see it, is a lovely country, not bad people. Why would you think that they're against Ethiopia?
I think, the media that we've seen, I mean, just look back over the last 2 years. We've seen corrupt media. I think the media sways a message that they want in the direction they want it to go. They don't tell the truth from the middle. I think there's always two sides to a story. We need to see both sides. And so, I just think that the media in general just tends to be corrupt.
Right.
And this is not the first time this has happened to Ethiopia. Sit down with 10 Americans and ask them the first thing that comes to mind when they think of Ethiopia. It's going to be the pictures that were painted in the 1980s of famine, drought, poverty. Nobody knows the tremendous beauty in Ethiopia.
But that's what the media did as well.
Yeah, and so I don't think that the media has painted that picture.
Right. Well, as an American citizen, you can see that what Ethiopia is facing at this moment. And we would normally think that Americans should help a country that needs help, not attack or isolate the country. So what do you think of the American involvement in a country which is huge and has over 100 million people?
Yeah, I think Ethiopia plays a strategic role in the Horn of Africa. I think Americans' involvement to come in and try to spew lies, to try to control a democratically elected government. I mean, every decision that has been made has been wrong on behalf of, America.
Well, the question is, why does America decide for Ethiopia?
America doesn't get to decide for Ethiopia. They're on the wrong side of this.
Yeah, they have tried, though.
They're attempting.
Yes.
Just like many others have attempted. But the history of Ethiopia is on her side. Every attempt to try to colonize Ethiopia has failed.
Right. So the question is now, whenever America changes a government or whatever a country does anything, the Africans or other countries don't get involved in that. Why do they think that they should involve in sorting out Ethiopia?
Other African countries or America?
No, America. Why does America feel responsible to change anything in the country? Ethiopia is a sovereign country, can sort herself out, don't you think?
I firmly agree. I believe it needs to be hands-off. Anybody trying to intervene in Ethiopia's situation where they're trying to bring harm and hurt and not help needs to keep their hands off. I think sanctions hurt the country. I think lies being spewed hurts the country. I think trying to form an oppositional government against an already democratically elected government is wrong. I mean, I think America's foreign policy towards Ethiopia is wrong. And like I've said before, I think the United States needs Ethiopia more than Ethiopia needs the United States.
Right. What do you think of aid? I mean, the country, Ethiopia, is very big. We pretty much have many things I genuinely think we can feed ourselves, but we didn't get that help, and we're always getting aid money and aid food and all sort of that stuff from the Western countries. But now do you think they're using aid to manipulate governments and to control countries?
Most definitely. You've got people who are poor or in poverty. The handout versus hand-up mentality. I think when you give somebody a meal for today, they're completely dependent on you for tomorrow. I really think we're going to see a different Ethiopia. Give it a few more years. I think Ethiopia was moving along the right track economically. I know they were in the top 10 to fastest growing economies in the world. And I think they're going to get back there. And I'm looking towards that direction, a brighter day that's coming where not only Ethiopia, because I think Ethiopia is going to set a precedence for all of Africa, but a brighter day where Ethiopians are going to be self-reliant.
Right. What do you think of the Grand Renaissance Dam? Do you think that's a good step to take?
I think it's an amazing step. Ethiopia's had all this water. I love my brothers and sisters in Egypt. I think what the media is portraying has tried to create conflict between the everyday Egyptian and the everyday Ethiopian. It's extremely political, and it doesn't need to be. Egypt has built 80% of their economy based on Ethiopia's water. The fact that Ethiopia wants to dam only a small percentage is a benefit to Sudan. It's a benefit to everybody surrounding, and it's a benefit to Ethiopia. Ethiopians need running water. They need electricity. You got so many areas. You just step outside of Addis. I mean, even in Addis, give me a day of the week, and I'll show you an area in the city where we have to sit by candlelight.
Yeah, that's true. What do you wish for Ethiopia in the future?
Yeah, so I think three things. The first one is leadership. I think Ethiopia is going to set the pace for a new day in Africa. You're going to see leadership like we've never seen. And so I think that I see that on the horizon. The number two is the economic prosperity. I think she's already on the path to prosperity. People can see the negative things, and I see the positive. And so I see the economic prosperity coming. I love what the Oromia tourism is doing. The Commissioner Lady Seyduga is doing when it comes to tourism. I think that's the next thing that's getting ready to bust in Ethiopia. I love what they're doing in lines with using tourism to bring economics into a community to transform rural communities. And then I'd say the third thing really is, in order for a country to move forward, there has to be unity. And I think we see unity on the surface, but I think there's some really deep-rooted issues when it comes to tribalism. And so, Nelson Mandela in South Africa, when he stepped into power, recognized that in South Africa and brought in, Desmond Tutu to bring racial reconciliation. I think that needs to happen in order to be one Ethiopia, 80 different and beautiful cultures together as one moving forward.
Right. Well, I can see that's happening now because of the war. You've probably seen that most Ethiopia coming together. The rallies throughout the world,
yes.
In the country and out of the country. What does that tell us? What does that make you feel?
I think Ethiopians generally want peace. They want peace. They're full of brotherly love, as we would say in America. They want to be unified. They want to be one. Doesn't matter the region that you live in Ethiopia. We're all going to drink coffee. You might use 3 or 4 different jabinas, but whether you have one extra lip or the other one doesn't, I think generally they really want to be one. And I saw that in the rallies. You had Somalis, you had Eritreans. I think just generally there's just a unified love.
Great. So do you think Ethiopians are resilient? I mean, we don't seem to be disrespected and attacked. I'm sure you know about the Adwa, and now that spirit is coming back because of the attack from other countries, like the Western countries and the terrorist group.
Yeah, so I think that Ethiopians are generally resilient. They're strong, they're courageous. I think the rest of Africa and the rest of the world see them in that light.
Right. So now the Ethiopians are having a war with terrorist groups. We're dealing that at home. But the other huge pressure is coming from the Western media and Western countries, the American involvement in other countries. How do you think we should tackle this as the Ethiopian community?
I think that, the rally was a great start. But I think after the rally, I think it's time to, really plot a strategy. Rallies are great. They build momentum. They make some noise. They get people interested. They build unity. Then after the fact, now we have to start looking at how do we tackle that, what's happening. And so I think, Americans And, anybody living here in the States, I think we have that right to contact our elected officials, which would include our congressperson living within our state. I think we need to take, whether it's a political approach or a political stance. I think we need to engage other medias, doing more interviews, broadening in the scope, not just working among the diaspora, but we've got to start looking among the African diaspora, looking at Africans here, having bigger conversations. I think this is a bigger move, and there's more momentum to really do something with Africans living here in the United States.
Right, wonderful. So you mentioned about tourism earlier on. So because of the American or the CNN propaganda and also the American notice, lots of people have left the country. Foreigners, especially Americans and other citizens have left the country. That hugely affected the tourism in the country. Tourism is one of the things we have to gain some sort of money and income generating stuff. Now the Ethiopian community have decided to go back. And I mean Ethiopian born, they could be Americans or British or anywhere in the world. They're planning to go back for Christmas and New Year. What do you think of that? And should the other country, citizens, should they involve in this and be part of it?
I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm really jealous. I wish I could go. Unfortunately, I'm starting a new job. But I wish I could be there for New Year's and Christmas. I think this is one of the greatest things that Ethiopians can do. I think it really does something to set the stand of the truth. It shows unity. It shows a unified Ethiopia. But it also helps economically. And so Ethiopians going back, spending time with family, whether it's a short trip to, Bishoftu or, another regional lake. I think I mentioned earlier, Oromia Tourism is doing an amazing job putting together areas and places I have never even imagined and would just love to see. Being able to take family and go on some of these excursions, buying from, your own fellow brothers and sisters, Ethiopian small-based businesses, I think is a great way to stimulate the economy.
Right. But talking of tourism, let's talk about AGOA. Mm-hmm. So they're talking about putting the AGOA out of Ethiopia, stopping Ethiopia from the AGOA thingy. And whenever they do this stuff or any sanction, it doesn't really only affect Dr. Abiy or the government. It affects the local people, the poor nation. So do you think this is fair?
I don't think it's fair. I think it's wrong. I think you are unjustly hurting innocent people. So I think it's wrong. But I think as diaspora, as those of us who love Ethiopia, I think there's a way where we can fire back. And one of those is for either participating in tourism if you're in country, but support a local Ethiopian-based organization. For Americans, this is a great time to purchase goods made in Ethiopia to support those small businesses.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Michelle Perry. Actually, I prefer to call you Brooke. Thank you so much for giving me your time.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Great. This is all we have today with Michelle Perry or Brooke. We've touched upon so many things. It was great to have her in Los Angeles. See you next time.